have now more than 35 groups. You see what the development is in Trinidad is a very good development. And the technical advancements, lighting, sound system, microphone, costume, stage, props, the time has changed. And as he said, the people are more educated. So you have to give a good performance. And since 2001, we have the National Ramleela Council of Trinidad and Tobago, and they have an important role in Ramleela happening performance in Trinidad. And what he also mentioned, we have no more sponsors, but rather we have is no more a festival maybe, and you have to work more and more hard to give good performance. And she said also that Ramleela brings society together. And Mr. Alvin Sultan go also in the past, and he gave also the development, and his issue was also women in Ramleela. You know, gender means not only men as in the past, yet over the male domination society in the past, and now we have gender. That means women are also involved in Ramleela, but he mentioned some problems, and maybe you can have questions about the problems he mentioned. And what he also mentioned was the participation of youth. That is very, very important for the future. And what he also mentioned was the Western style on stage. And important is also Durga Puja in Navratam as a part of the Ramleela maybe here, and modern decoration and new atmosphere. I think, ladies and gentlemen, enough issues for you to ask questions. The floor is open. Who has questions at this moment? Yeah, Panditji?
We are more educated and give the impression that the people, our ancestors who came, who were knowledgeable in the language in which they spoke, as if they did not know anything. I think young people today, I am thankful for the gentleman who has given praise to the Pandey family, I think in Srila. God bless you for that. But a lot of young people, because they read translations, and I listen to reverends also, at funerals, make attacks on my ancestors who came and who knew Hindi. And it is because in their Western style, they have no knowledge of what the ancestors knew. Now they read translations and make assertions. Those people, my ancestors, were ignorant. Those of you who don't understand the language, either learn it, but don't make such statements that our ancestors were ignorant. It hurts me. I'm 75, so I lived when those ancestors were here. And I will live again when your grandchildren will be here. And I tell you, anytime you forget your ancestors and make those bad remarks, your knowledge is useless. I'm sorry, no apology.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Maybe what he said, Mr. Sultan, if you say the people nowadays are more educated, that don't mean that the former people were not educated. What he want to say, I think, is in Suriname, for example, we don't have university. My parents were educated, but not at the university level. But he will give you answer, I think, Mr. Sultan.
In terms of the education level back then, if we were alive back then, we would have been probably at their same level. And it's because of the level of education that they had at that point in time is what lead up to us being here today. The time, as I mentioned before, Ramleela is in Trinidad is 100+ years old. So we educated, or the youth, they came up with the education to up-to-date standard, but it's only by following the examples set out by our ancestors. That is why I ended my presentation with the regards to Mr. Sicharan Pandui, because without him, the knowledge that we have now, yes, we have modern things introduced in Ramleela, we have modern lighting and props and so forth. But to them and back then, when you look at the sacrifice they made with having nothing of these, but yet they understood the Basha, they understood the language, and the depiction of the Ramleela, which would bring tears from your eyes. You know, they executed in such a manner that was recognized, that was of worth. And not that we're moving forward, as my conclusion states, that we would forget all about the past, but we have to take some elements from them and keep it with us. And that is what identifies our style of Ramleela.
Yes, that I understood. Also, what he said is young and old have to work together. Man and woman have to work together. Thank you. Who I can give? Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I would like to give some support to my friend here. There are two things. Someone wrote that people who learn history seldom learn from history. Secondly, I want to remind the youth, what we are witnessing now in the world and in Trinidad and Tobago is green lines are falling before right lines.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to congratulate both presenters to very brilliant presentations this morning. However, Anya, my concerns are directed towards you. Under literacy and illiteracy, and I join Panditji in this, you mentioned that our youths today are probably more educated than our ancestors. I would like to say that the thing is that in those early days, they knew Hindi. As far as the English or the, what you call the colonials were concerned, they were not educated because they did not know English. In 1945, when they tried to introduce a literacy test for voting, one of the concerns that was raised there, again, was the fact that they were very educated. A lot of them knew Hindi, but not English. And they were not going to be permitted to vote because of that. So the thing is that our ancestors, a lot of them were educated. Some of them were brilliant scholars. We take into consideration people like Pandit Janka Prasad Sharma from the south, and his people who came with him, very, very educated indeed, but they were not educated in English. So for some people, they were not educated. That's not concerned. The second thing is a factual one. You stated in your presentation, the National Ramleela Council was established in 2001. The National Ramleela Council was established in 1991, not 2001. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Luka. Yes, please. And yeah,
Mr. Chairman, this lady was waiting for a chance right here. Next, yes, this one.
Sitaram to all. As a child attending Ramleela in Avocat, I identify instantly with the image of the field presentation and the rain and the mud. What I want to say, 50 years later, I am sitting in the belly of the University of the West Indies and learning more about Ramleela. And so every single person who has contributed to elevating and sharing the knowledge of Ramleela at this level, I say thank you and congratulations.
thank you.
Secondly, I would like to ask Mr. Sultan, I'm very excited by your comment that for Ramleela to survive, it has to change. Of course, we must keep the history, the knowledge of Ramleela and its purity, but perhaps you can enlighten us on how you would like to see it change for future generations. Thank you.
The element of change is one that is gradual, and it's going on now in each and every one of the groups. My vision of Ramleela in the future is where each and every participant would actually have a better appreciation and understanding of the religious significance of the Leela itself. For I firmly believe in the traditional way that they themselves become the actual Lord, the God. And I want them to understand that. And yes, in some Leelas you would observe that there are deviations from the actual scripts. But there are some places you may go and you may see a lot of deviation. They would take it, the humor then to a next level, which is away from the actual meaning and the expression that you would want to create by that particular act or that particular performance. So again, it comes with each and every one of us by sharing our knowledge, by learning the roles and responsibility of each character. This would identify as to how you should portray it. And this is something that I would like to see, that the youths understand Ramleela as it is written in the sacred text of the Ramcharitamanas.
Thank you. Any more questions?
No, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to make an intervention because you've raised some very interesting issue in this discussion about illiteracy, education, non-education. And now, considering my age and your age, I can't resist the temptation of being a teacher here. And I would like, and these are the debates that have been going on back home in India as well, and I think elsewhere in the world as well, where orality was the way that the culture passed on its knowledge systems. So when we debate about this whole issue of what is educated, what is not educated, what is literate, what is not literate, we must remember that there is a steady politics of devaluating certain knowledge systems which did not come with the print word. Okay? The whole knowledge systems that were in close association with nature, those systems which understood the body much better than your modern sciences do today. Okay? And the communication was face-to-face communication, and Ramleela is one of the examples. Your Vedas are another example, that despite all the technological advancement that we have today, we have lost touch with that other selves of ours, with those other knowledge systems, because of which you find today ecological disbalances. You find a fragmentation in the society which probably the Africans, the Asians, the Indian did not face. And because of this great rush to modernize, we began to devaluate our own knowledge systems. So I think when we use these categories, we should use them with a little more consciousness from our part to see what we mean by them. Because oral and the written is where the power lies, and those who came with the written word were the ones who became the rulers. So do not, look at it as an issue of what is progress today, because what has been progress today has also proved that it is fatal to the life on this planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kautal. Yes, more questions?
Prior to us making any pronouncements, perhaps we should pay obeisance to the indomitable spirits of our progenitors who crossed the Kalahari. For indeed, had they not crossed and had they not sustained and brought with them, we who are somewhat educated would not have been able to really enjoy the fruits of our divine. I'm getting quite emotional because my father also played in the Ramleela. What I'm really trying to say is that at some points in time, I think now that we are becoming overly academic, and less practical. I remember as a little girl, my auntie would say to me, "Honey, honey, say, baby, ja, hard wood boy ke diya barami." You know, the thing about it is that I think that we should become less academic and try to introduce some elements in our everyday lives to our children to be more practical, read less, and do more. I think this is what I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Everything that you have said, these are models of excellent models of our forefathers, these two persons here. Anya is accomplished in almost every art form that our ancestors have brought. Maybe she didn't explain herself what she meant by education. Education probably in modern technology and so on, and that is how, but she does not mean that you must forego the essence of what is dear to us. And the same with Alvin. What he was appealing to is many things we had discussed in the council. We were told once that not a Ramleela group had a performance in Wassa, and they made it into a slapstick comedy. That is what Alvin is referring to, because we've had many discussions. Sometimes young people are carried away with the comedy. The Ramayana doesn't have a lot of comedy. It's not comedy. It's serious. There is humor, there is local content, local color, and so on. And this serious young man, that is what he's trying to tell us. He's not belittling our forefathers. They knew Hindi, they were literate, right? We adopted English. A story, there's a gentleman who's 94 years old. He did Ramleela, he understood the Hindi. He had many roles because it was narrated in Hindi. Those who didn't know Hindi couldn't take part, right? Now he brought up his children, he couldn't get promotion because he couldn't speak English. Listen, sons and daughters, don't bother with the Hindi, learn the English because of your jobs, right? So this is what happened, but we have deep, deep respect, all these children. That is why they are in Ramleela. They have deep respect for our traditions. So I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kamla, for your explanation. And you have to go. Okay.
What is ironic is we speak about being educated, but looking back then, we have to deem ourselves illiterate to what they knew. Because for them to put forth a production like this, which we have to go to school now to learn about drama, to learn about miming, to learn about the different dance and so forth. They had that knowledge, and that came from our Natya Shastras, which is the performing arts manual of our Indians. Well, not Indians, wrong word I should say, but the Natya Shastras is there for all of us. It's part of our culture. And this is something I have to say I well appreciate their contribution.
Mr. Sultan, you had it about women to act with other male figures than children. And do you see this as a problem?
Well, the interaction, this was only the good side that I give. As I say, the views were only of some women back then. Not all women were practitioners of this traditional way. The interaction, once it's within the limits of the Leela itself, it's okay. But because of the traditional belief that they had, the respect, being around another male figure back then, I know I interact with a lot of older people, and growing up, my aunts and them, even up to today, she would tell me how their lifestyle was back then, and the respect and the traditions that they followed. And again, this were some family used to carry out these traditions. There were families that were more open, more in the forefront, and better to communicate with other male figurines and so on. But she used to give me an experience that if they were to see like her father-in-law coming up and her head is not covered and there's a newspaper or something there, she would grab that up and cover her face and cover her head because it's the way that they grew up, the respect that they maintained and the traditional way that they maintained.
Thank you very much. Miss Anya, you have to say anything more?
I have one thing to say. Up here?
Yes?
An interesting discussion from my point of view, and I'm not going to take sides between the ancient and the modern, but I do want to make an observation and a suggestion and a question. So the observation is that, at least insofar as I can deduce from what I'm hearing over these 2 days, increasingly Ramleela is becoming a stage production in basically the Western mode of theater, that is, lights, costumes, action on a stage in a single space, and so on. So it's a particular kind of religious performance done on a stage in a style that derives from Western Europe to North America, wherever Western theater is practiced, including in India, where spoken drama or Western theater is very, very popular. In the Ramleela that I study in Ramnagar, but in many, 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 many other Ramleelas in India, the performance is a journey that is very, very close physically to the people, where bad weather is not a problem, but part of what Ram and his family and his allies endured as they moved great distance from Ayodhya to Chitrakoot, etc., onto Lanka, where the audience itself was not back watching a drama, but in a certain sense actively assisting Ram and the others in their journey and in their quest and in their battle, pushing the chariots, assisting, carrying the swarus, etc. So my suggestion, as an experiment, is for somebody in Trinidad to say, let us stage a Ramleela that takes place in 5, 6, 7 places. That takes 5, 6, 7, 10 days, where we begin in one part of the town, St. Augustine, Port of Spain, San Fernando, wherever, one part of the town for Ayodhya. And then we move the next day to another part of the town, which would be Janakpur. And then we go into exile, Chitrakoot, Kishkanda, and finally on to Lanka, and then return to Ayodhya. To actually have this journey. Now, this is an older style, yes, but this older style could be used along with modern technology in the sense of modern lighting, perhaps microphoning, but the important thing, 2 important things that I think make Ramleela absolutely different than any other kind of performance. The closeness of the spectator to the performer, the assistance that the spectator becomes citizens of Ayodhya, becomes citizens of Janakpur, sometimes become citizens of Lanka and assist Ravan, and the journeying, the physical effort. Everything I hear you say, I admire, but you're making it easier. You're making it easier. Ram's struggle was not easy. He went into exile. He gave up things for 14 years. You are staying on the throne. You are staying in Ayodhya, technically speaking. You're trying to make things easier. You are communicating the story, but not the experience. And I think one should think about communicating the experience to the youth. And I suggest, I would even come down and help you stage it, if you really would do it. 5 places, or 6, 5 to 10 days, a journey through the worst of weather. That's what I suggest.